Leslie stopped and inspected some markings on a boulder. "The crash is that way," she said, pointing to the right. "Wait, can you smell it?" Alex asked. Everyone took a few sniffs. Something died somewhere around here," Asterion said, his nose wrinkling in distaste. "We should trust Asterion with this. He knows how a putrid cadaver smells," Shadowheart quipped from the side. As Asterion and Shadowheart locked eyes in a silent battle of wills, Alex's senses sharpened. Something moved in the bushes to their left. He couldn't feel its mind, an eerie emptiness where there should have been thoughts. A flash of movement, a thing leapt from the undergrowth, claws outstretched, aiming for Asterion's throat. Alex reacted instinctively, his boots striking the creature midair and sending it sprawling across the dirt. "What is a ghoul doing here?" Gale asked, conjuring a small ball of fire in his hand, his voice tense. The ghoul writhed on the ground before scrambling upright. It was an emaciated, roughly humanoid creature with a mottled, decaying hide stretched tight over its bones. Its sunken eyes burned like hot coals, and its sharp teeth chattered in hunger. "It's not alone," Alex said, unsheathing his blade and pointing to his left. The underbrush rustled violently. Shadows detached from the trees, dozens of hunched, skeletal figures emerging from the foliage. 20 ghouls and ghasts skittered toward them with unnatural speed, their mouths dripping with blackened saliva. Karlach was the first to react, her axe swinging in a wide arc, splitting a ghoul from shoulder to hip in a gruesome spray. "Come on, then!" she roared, fire flickering along her skin. "Don't let them touch you!" While shouted as he sent an eldritch blast hurling into a ghoul that had leapt from a nearby tree. It shrieked as it was flung back, its bones audibly snapping upon impact with a boulder. The party quickly shifted into formation. Leslie, Karlach, Glut, and Alex held the front, shielding the others. Shadowheart stood behind them, prepared to heal or smite as needed. Gale took center, his hands already weaving a spell, while Weil and Asterion covered their flanks, loosing blasts of magic and arrows at the advancing undead. The first wave crashed into them, snarling and clawing. The battle was brutal but swift. The undead fell in droves, their brittle bones snapping like twigs under the might of the warriors. Fire, steel, and radiant magic tore through them, and despite the initial swarm, the ghouls were no match for their combined strength. Karlach wiped her axe clean on a ghoul's tattered remains. "That wasn't so bad." "But the smell." She gagged slightly, waving a hand in front of her face. Just as she spoke, a deep, guttural growl echoed from the treeline. The shadows shifted once more, and 2 towering figures emerged. Death shepherds. The air around them grew cold, thick with the scent of rot. Each of the shepherds was a monstrous figure, armored skeletal behemoths, their plated forms covered in bone motifs, their hollow eyes glowing with sinister malice. They wielded enormous great swords, their edges dripping with a necrotic green energy. A sickly aura surrounded them, drifting outward like a plague-ridden mist. It seeped into the corpses of the fallen ghouls, and before their eyes, the slaughtered undead began to move again. Bones reknit, flesh reformed, and within moments, the ghouls were back on their feet, snarling hungrily. "You just had to jinx it," Asterion muttered, his grip tightening on his daggers. A fireball crashed into the shepherds, engulfing them in a brilliant explosion. The shockwave sent nearby ghouls flying, turning some into nothing but ash. "Nice shot, Gale," Weil praised, his eyes scanning the aftermath. "Thanks, but I fear it wasn't enough," Gale responded grimly. As the smoke cleared, the shepherds remained standing. Though scorched and smoldering, they barely seemed fazed. One of them slowly raised its massive great sword, pointing it directly at the party. All the remaining undead rushed at them, their aggression now heightened to a feverish level. Every time they slew one, it rose back up, its grotesque form regenerating almost instantly. Fortunately, when they were burned to ash or struck by spells imbued with holy magic, they were permanently destroyed. Even so, the relentless tide of ghouls and ghasts was overwhelming. The death shepherds didn't remain idle while their minions clawed at the party. One of them swung its massive greatsword at Karlach, forcing her to brace against the impact. This one hits like a bull," she groaned, her muscles straining under the force of the strike. "I know Shah is not the most holy deity, But don't you have a more powerful spell? Gale asked Shadowheart, electricity crackling from his hands as he attempted to strike one of the shepherds. Before the lightning could reach its target, the green aura surrounding the creature dissipated the magic as though it were nothing. Shadowheart raised her hands, whispering an incantation. A small ball of radiant light formed between her palms before exploding outward, sending a wave of divine energy across the battlefield. The holy light seared through the ghouls and ghasts, reducing them to dust. Even the shepherds flinched under its power, their green aura flickering. Shadowheart stumbled, placing her hands on her knees, her breathing rough and uneven. "Tsk." Leslie clicked her tongue in disapproval but wasted no time, using the opening to charge the nearest shepherd. Now, without their undead minions to rely on, the fight became more evenly matched. Still, the shepherds were formidable foes, their sheer strength forcing the party to fight with everything they had. Leslie's flaming sword came crashing down, slicing through the skull of one of the shepherds. For a moment, they believed the battle was over, but as they turned to face the remaining one, the eerie green veil pulsed, and the fallen shepherd rose once more, its severed head grotesquely reattaching itself. "Split up!" While shouted, Glut, Alex, and Weil focused on the resurrected shepherd while the rest of the party continued battling the other. The clash of metal and bone filled the air as Karlach and Leslie took turns trading blows with the monstrous being. Gale launched another fireball, and this time, the explosion of flames engulfed the shepherd, burning away the sickly aura. With a final, mighty swing, Karlach cleaved the last of them in two. Finally, Karlach sighed, collapsing onto a boulder. She looked around at the piles of ash and smoldering corpses. That was one hell of a workout. "Do you think there are more rotted meat bags lurking around?" Glut asked Alex, his eyes shifting across the battlefield. "Possible," Alex replied, his senses tuned to the limit, scanning for any lingering threats. "Let's go check where those undead came from," Weil suggested after everyone had taken a moment to catch their breath. His eyes scanned the dense foliage ahead. They followed the trail of carnage, turning left down a dirt path. The open road provided a clear view of their surroundings, but the sight before them stopped them in their tracks. "What happened here?" Karlach muttered, her voice heavy with unease. The ground was littered with dozens of corpses, their bodies twisted in unnatural poses. The stench of blood and decay clung to the air, thick and suffocating. "This was a battle between the absolute cultists and Githyanki," Alex deduced, nudging one of the bodies with his boot. Around its neck, he spotted a necklace engraved with the absolute's symbol. "We should search them. Maybe they have something that explains what happened here," Gale suggested. "Good idea," Weil agreed, kneeling beside a fallen cultist, sifting through their belongings. After several minutes of searching, Asterion called out, "Guys, I found something." Weil approached and took the parchment from Asterion's hand. Clearing his throat, he began reading aloud. "Duke Ravengard is to be delivered and unharmed, or mostly so immediately. Moonrise Towers cannot fulfill its destiny until the Duke has been delivered. Those who succeed will be rewarded. Those who fail will face first Myroth, then Gortash's, then mine again." Signed, General Ketherick Thorm. Weil's grip on the letter tightened, his jaw clenching. "Those bastards were the kidnappers who took my father." Alex's keen eyes caught Karlach tensing at the mention of Gortash's name. For a brief moment, her flames flared brighter before she forced herself to remain composed. "Do you guys know who Gortash and Ketherick Thorm are?" Alex asked. "Gortash is a black market dealer in Baldur's Gate." "I never thought of him as the religious type," Karlach said, though her voice carried something beyond mere recognition. There was a history there Alex could tell. "I've heard his name a few times around Baldur's Gate." "He's a rising political figure," Asterion added. "Of course, he is," Karlach murmured under her breath. "I read about Ketherick Thorm in a book a while ago." "He was the one who created the Shadowlands, but he was killed a century ago," Gale recalled. Weil exhaled sharply. "Things just keep getting more complicated. But first, we need to make sure the grove doesn't get attacked by the Githyanki." Leslie's expression darkened, but she gave a firm nod, pleased by Weil's words. With their immediate objective set, they backtracked and this time turned right, pressing forward toward the creche. As they walked, They heard a woman shout to them. "Hey!" she called out. Everyone stopped and turned in the direction of the voice. Standing before them was an older woman with long, white hair, typically tied back neatly. Her face bore the marks of time-mere wrinkles etched from experience and wisdom. Despite her age, there was an undeniable strength in her posture, the kind carried by those who had spent their lives on the battlefield. She wore practical, well-worn armor adorned with the symbol of an eye, the same emblem Blurg and Omelum had on their robes. The group cautiously approached, while taking the lead. "A friendly face," the woman said, a relieved smile crossing her lips. She scanned the group, her gaze lingering on Leslie for a fraction longer before settling on Weil. "Oh, you are a sweet blessing, my dear. You know, I've had nothing but trouble all day. I've been accosted, chased, insulted. Look over there. Do you see that wretched little hive?" She gestured towards the horizon, where a grand temple nestled within the mountainous landscape. The structure was an architectural marvel, its tall, pointed spires and intricate carvings standing in stark contrast to the jagged cliffs and dense vegetation surrounding it. The temple exuded an air of ancient reverence, but something about its presence was unsettling. "It looks like a temple," Weil observed, narrowing his eyes. "Oh, it certainly appears that way, but inside, it's swarming with brutish, stupid, rude Githyanki." "Brutish and rude by your wretched standards." "But stupid, Kaki," Leslie snapped, her tone laced with disdain. The woman barely acknowledged Leslie's remark, continuing smoothly. "Your charming companion would call it a creche, but it was built on what remained after the Githyanki slaughtered all the monks. I'd call it a murderous training camp." "Acutely observed on both counts," Leslie admitted, folding her arms. "Honestly, I was doing them a favor, offering to buy one of their eggs." "And how am I repaid?" "Attacked and run off like some transient." Weil arched a brow. "You tried to buy one of their children?" "What? No, of course not. I was merely look, it's just an egg. The Society of Brilliance asked me to acquire one of their rows so they could incubate it and, once it hatches, raise the spawn in their tradition. Please, do enlighten me." "What is this tradition?" Leslie asked, her tone a dangerous whisper. "The Society believes a Githyanki raised in a peaceful, nurturing environment can overcome its violent nature." "I'm sure your friend would agree." The woman cast a glance at Leslie before adding, "Though, a Githyanki forsaking its violent nature is about as likely as a gnome growing wings and flying." Leslie's grip on her weapon tightened. "Violence is taught, not inherited." "You don't need to steal a child to know that," Weil interjected firmly. The woman scoffed. "You've been sipping from the same goblet as the Society. Perhaps you'd be willing to help, then?" "To prove your point." "They may have chased me away, but surely the Gith would welcome a person with such sympathetic views to their creche. And once inside, you could simply purloin an egg." Leslie bristled, stepping forward, her blade half raised. "Steal one of Gith's own? I will slit your throat for even suggesting it." The woman remained unshaken, barely sparing Leslie a glance before addressing Weil once more. "I'm not talking to you," she said dismissively before turning back to him. "You will be well compensated, of course." "Just bring me an egg." Before Weil could respond, Alex stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. "Blurg and Omelum are colleagues of yours?" he asked, his voice even but laced with curiosity. The woman tilted her head slightly. "Yes." "Why do you ask?" "We met them in the Underdark. They tried to help us with a problem." For the first time, the woman's stern expression softened slightly at Alex's words. She studied him with newfound interest, as if reassessing her assumptions about the group. "Are Blurg and Omelum are good souls?" "They are always willing to lend a hand or a tentacle," she replied, nodding thoughtfully. "They spoke highly of the Society of Brilliance and its goals," Alex said. The woman's eyes twinkled with interest. "The Society's mission is one of understanding and enlightenment, though not without its challenges." "What exactly do you plan to do with this egg once it hatches?" Weil asked. "The Society will raise the spawn, educate it, and observe its development. It will be treated with respect and care, unlike the harsh conditions of a traditional creche," she explained. "Let's say we agree, Weil said cautiously. How exactly do you propose we get this egg without causing a bloodbath? The Githyanki aren't exactly known for their hospitality. The woman smiled dryly. That, my dear, is where your skills come into play. Diplomacy, subterfuge, a little bit of charm. Whatever works. The Githyanki may be fierce, but they are not invincible. Asterion, who had been pondering quietly, spoke up. And what do you plan to offer us in return for this risky venture? A fair question, the woman acknowledged. I can offer you gold, certainly. But I can also provide you with rare knowledge and magical artifacts from our society's collection. Things you won't find elsewhere. The group exchanged glances, weighing their options. So, what do you say? Will you help the Society of Brilliance? Weil turned to the group, seeking their consensus. What do you think? Shall we take this mission on? Alex nodded. This could be an opportunity to improve his psychic abilities. If we're careful, we can do this without causing too much trouble. And the rewards sound promising, Karlach added. Shadowheart sighed but nodded. Let's make sure we're not walking into a trap. Gale agreed. Knowledge and artifacts could be invaluable to us. I say we proceed, with caution. Magic is not my cup of tea, but it sounds worth it, Asterion said with a small shrug. Glut offered just a thumbs up. Weil turned back to the woman. All right, we'll help you, but know this, we'll be doing it on our terms. No unnecessary risks. The woman smiled broadly. That's all I can ask. Thank you, truly. I'll be waiting here for your return. Good luck. With their decision made, the group walked towards the temple. They stopped before a small ornate column with an inscribed stone plaque on it. Approach the ferry in Lathander's grace. May his gaze shine upon you, pilgrim. Lathander is a greater god with a vast portfolio including birth, renewal, spring, and youth, as well as athletics, self-perfection, vitality, and creativity, Gale informed Alex. The party stopped before a rudder next to a mechanism, a cable attached to it. At the end of the cable was a cable car resting close to the temple. Weil walked to the rudder and tried to move it to bring the car from the other side, but it was stuck. Damn, completely stuck. I wonder when it was last used. Let me try it, Karlach said as she walked over and grabbed the rudder horns. She struggled a bit, but after some effort, it moved. They heard a metallic screech as the rusted mechanism strained to bring the cable car. Alex suddenly dashed and pushed Gale away. An arrow whizzed past, embedding itself in the ground where Gale had just been standing. Everyone quickly unsheathed their weapons and prepared their spells. Those are Githyanki, but what happened to them? Weil asked, his eyes narrowing. A group of Githyanki was shambling toward them. Their once pristine armor and proud gait were gone, replaced by twisted, contorted movements. Black greenish mud crawled all over their bodies, slithering like living tendrils through the cracks in their armor. Their eyes, once sharp and filled with discipline, glowed with a sickly green light, vacant yet brimming with an unnatural rage. One of them let out a guttural, otherworldly hiss, its jaw unhinging wider than any human or Githyanki should be able to. Then, without warning, they charged. Stand your ground. Weil shouted, summoning eldritch energy to his fingertips. Karlach gritted her teeth, gripping her axe. Oh, this is going to be fun. Gale began incanting a spell, golden runes illuminating in the air around him. We don't know what they're infected with, so don't let them touch you. Shadowheart clutched her amulet, whispering a prayer to Shah, while Leslie drew her sword, fury burning in her alien yellow eyes. Asterion grinned, his fangs flashing. Well, this just got interesting. Karlach, Alex, Glut, Leslie, and Shadowheart were already moving forward to intercept the cursed Githyanki. As the group drew closer, their adversaries straightened up and rushed forward. Their previous shuffling gait was replaced by swift and agile movements. Their glowing, sickly green eyes bore no hint of recognition, only an insatiable hunger for violence. The sword-wielding Githyanki gracefully dodged and swung their weapons with an eerie precision while arrows flew by, shot by the rangers in the back. Why are you not killing this rotten meat? You are more than capable of doing so. I am still puzzled why a being like you is wasting his time in the company of these weak walking meats, Glut asked Alex, his voice a mix of curiosity and contempt. Because they need to learn to work together, Alex responded while swiftly dodging a sword that passed just centimeters from his face and kicking away the attacker with enough force to break several ribs. Besides, they will prove useful later. And though he didn't admit it aloud, a small part of him enjoyed their companionship. "Move away, this isn't a dancing ring," Leslie growled as she charged past him, her flaming blade slicing through one of the corrupted brethren, searing flesh and bone in a single stroke. "Back away!" While shouted, everyone dashed aside as a fireball came crashing down on the cursed Githyanki. The explosion sent a wave of heat and force through the battlefield, igniting patches of grass and sending bits of charred flesh into the air. A dark mist appeared where the fireball landed, enveloping the surviving Githyanki from Gale's spell. The unnatural darkness seemed to whisper, sucking the warmth from the air and filling the surroundings with a suffocating dread. They waited at the periphery of the spell, ready to engage. As the mist slowly dissipated, the Githyanki emerged, their bodies covered in a thin layer of ice, patches of burnt skin peeling away, their pointy ears eaten away by the caustic effect of the spell. Their breathing was ragged, the corruption still festering within them, but they refused to fall. Already injured by the combination of spells, the group quickly dispatched them. Blades flashed, spells crackled, and in mere moments, the corrupted warriors lay still, their twisted souls released from their torment. "This happens to those claimed by the Shadowlands, corrupted into husks of their former selves," Gale said grimly, his hand still crackling with residual energy. He looked at Alex, his expression dark with understanding. As the last of the corrupted warriors perished, the strange, rotting essence that clung to them dissipated into the air like smoke. The taint of the Shadowlands withdrew, leaving behind only the bloodied, lifeless bodies. "At least they died an honorable death," Leslie muttered. Her voice was steady, but Alex noticed the slight tremor in her hands. She took one last glance at the bodies before turning and stepping into the cable car. Alex crouched next to one of the bodies and narrowed his eyes. Wisps of strange, dark energy still lingered, dissipating into the air like curling tendrils of smoke. He reached out, with the intention to absorb whatever power lay within. Just as his fingers brushed against the energy, a whisper, soft and melodious, tickled his ear. "Don't do it." The voice was unfamiliar yet strangely soothing. It carried an authority that made Alex pause, his fingers curling back. Alex exhaled sharply, shaking off the strange sensation, and walked to join the rest of the party as they boarded the cable car. Karlach grabbed the lever and pushed it. The mechanism groaned and creaked, the rusted gears protesting after years of disuse. The cable car shook before slowly lurching forward, carrying them towards the looming monastery. While walked to Leslie, who stood at the edge of the car, staring at the temple with an unreadable expression. "How do you feel about killing your own people?" While asked cautiously, Leslie looked at him for a moment before returning her gaze to the monastery. Her fingers tightened around the hilt of her blade. "They were already dead the moment they were corrupted," she said evenly. Despite her calm tone, Alex saw how her hands clenched at Wile's question. The cable car shook once more before coming to a halt. As they stepped off, their boots crunching against the stone, their path was immediately blocked by a group of 5 druids and their animal companions. The druids wore robes marked with eerie, twisted symbols similar to those worn by the shadow druids Alex had encountered in the grove. Wile opened his mouth to speak, but Alex pushed him down just as an arrow flew through the space where his head had been. The hiss of the projectile barely registered before a wall of fire erupted between them and their attackers. A barrage of arrows followed, vanishing into the searing flames and turning to ash before they could reach their targets. "Thank you, Alex, and you, Gale, for the wall of fire," Wile said as he straightened up, his breath still catching in his throat. Gale hesitated for a moment, glancing at Alex. He had not been the one to cast the spell, but seeing Alex's impassive expression, he decided to play along. "Always a pleasure," he replied smoothly. Alex barely acknowledged them. His gaze was fixed on the tree line ahead, where 3 more druids stood motionless, concealed within the shadows. He could feel their presence, sense their malicious intent lurking in the underbrush. "Astarion, turn invisible and strike the druids in the bushes once Gale dismisses the wall of fire," Alex instructed. Astarion scoffed, his crimson eyes narrowing. "I'm not taking orders from you." Alex unsheathed his sword and held it before him. "Sing," he commanded. A beautiful, haunting melody filled the air, resonating like a symphony woven into the very fabric of reality. A silvery light enveloped the group before vanishing, leaving a lingering warmth behind. "Whoa, this feels nice," Karlach murmured, flexing her fingers before gripping her battle axe tightly. "Gale, dismiss the wall," Alex said, his voice even. Gale nodded, and with a flick of his wrist, the flames vanished, revealing the enemies beyond. The shadow druids wasted no time, charging forward with their animal companions at their side. The air filled with growls and war cries as the battle began anew. Alex leapt into the fray, flipping over his companions and landing gracefully in the thick where the druids were hiding. Screams erupted as his blade found flesh, cutting through the darkness with merciless precision. The rest of the party sprang into action. Karlach surged forward, her axe a blur as it cleaved through fur and flesh alike. Weil fought with deadly precision, his rapier darting between defenses, exploiting weaknesses with practiced ease. Shadowheart moved fluidly, her mace striking with divine purpose while her shield repelled incoming blows. Leslie was a force of nature, her flaming sword carving a path through the chaos, her every strike backed by sheer willpower and relentless training. Glut, watching the battlefield with lazy disinterest, swung his mace idly, yet each strike landed with devastating force, crushing bone and rupturing flesh with unnatural ease. Astarion, despite his earlier reluctance, had vanished into the shadows. The sickening sound of his daggers piercing vital points soon accompanied the cries of the dying. From the back lines, Gale unleashed a torrent of spells, his firebolts and arcane blasts ensuring that no enemy found the time to regroup. His magic crackled through the air, cutting off escape routes and forcing the druids into the waiting arms of his allies. The battle was swift, brutal. One by one, the shadow druids fell. The last survivor, realizing their inevitable demise, turned to flee. Karlach was faster. With a single mighty swing, her axe cleaved through the fleeing druid, silencing their final, desperate cry. The forest grew eerily silent in the wake of the battle. The only sounds were the ragged breaths of the victors and the crackling embers of lingering magic. Alex emerged from the underbrush, his blade dripping with fresh blood. His piercing gaze swept across the battlefield, ensuring no threats remained. "Is everyone all right?" he asked, his voice calm but laced with underlying concern. "We're fine," Karlach replied, wiping the blood from her axe with a satisfied grin. "Thanks to your quick thinking. We handled it well, but we need to stay alert. There could be more of them," Shadowheart cautioned, glancing at the fallen druids. "Agreed. We've made enough noise to attract unwanted attention," Gale added. Before anyone could respond, a voice rang out from the shadows. "Stop right there!" The group turned in unison, their hands instinctively moving to their weapons. A group of Githyanki warriors approached, their imposing figures framed against the moonlit trees, their eyes gleaming with unmistakable hostility. Leslie walked forward, and the group halted a few steps before her. "Walk ahead," the female Githyanki at the front ordered as she moved to the side. Leslie stepped forward without hesitation, her posture rigid with discipline. The rest of the party followed suit, keeping their eyes forward as the sharp-edged weapons of the Githyanki escorts hovered inches from their backs. The message was clear: any sign of resistance would be met with swift violence. As they passed through the monastery gate, Alex's sharp gaze fell upon a lifeless form crumpled near the entrance. A gnome, clad in the garb of the absolute cultists, lay sprawled in the dirt with an arrow buried deep between her shoulder blades. Blood pooled beneath her, still fresh, glistening in the dim light. "What happened to this one?" Alex asked, his tone calm yet probing. "Shut up," barked one of the Gith, shoving him roughly with the stock of his crossbow. Alex took the blow without reaction, his expression unreadable. Their silent march led them deeper into the monastery, descending through cold, worn stone corridors. Finally, they arrived at another gate, this one reinforced and flanked by more armed Githyanki. A tense energy filled the air, thick enough to choke on. "Sentries, to arms." "Istik, state your purpose." Quickly, a female Githyanki barked, Her piercing eyes locked onto Leslie. "Stand down, Jis." "Is it not Vlakith's command to welcome her faithful?" Leslie countered, stepping forward with the authority of one raised in the customs of her people. "I expected no visitors, faithful or otherwise." "Why have you come?" "We seek the Zthisk." "Show me the way." A hush fell over the chamber. The mention of the Zthisk sent a ripple of tension through the assembled warriors. "You are infected?" "A Gake thrall is something to eradicate, not reason with. The faithful must be purified." "This is Vlakith's protocol," Leslie responded. The female Githyanki regarded Leslie with a mixture of disdain and curiosity before nodding curtly. "Tsk. Let the Gustil carry out your fate. Report to the infirmary at once. And be careful. Kreshialek watches you." She stepped aside, and the massive iron gate groaned open, revealing a vast corridor splitting into 3 separate paths, with a marble pillar standing as a silent sentinel in the middle. Leslie strode ahead with confidence, disappearing into the shadows of the passage. As the rest of the party moved to follow, a Githyanki soldier thrust a hand out, blocking their path. "Step inside." Another guard barked, motioning toward a grated door leading into a dimly lit chamber. "They are with me." "They know where the artifact is," Leslie said. The Gith holding the door open looked at the woman who Leslie had just spoken to. "Let them in," she said. Everyone walked to Leslie except Alex, who walked inside the dark room. He raised his hand just in time to catch an arrow aimed at his head. His senses prickled. The scent of blood hung thick in the air. He cast a glance at the others before stepping forward and walking into the darkness. The room was filled with agony. Dozens of figures lay motionless on the stone floor, some unconscious, others barely clinging to life. Torture instruments lined the walls, their edges glistening with old and fresh blood alike. But Alex's focus locked onto one particular figure chained to the far wall, naked, beaten, and covered in fresh wounds. The tiefling woman from the mountain pass. He crouched beside her, his fingers pressing against her neck. Her pulse was weak, her breathing shallow. The blood pooled beneath her was thick, too much for her small frame to have lost and still be alive. Without hesitation, he retrieved a healing potion from his vest, uncorked it, and gently poured it between her cracked lips. Her throat worked as she instinctively swallowed, her breathing stabilizing ever so slightly. "Stand up," a male Githyanki ordered coldly, pressing the tip of his blade against Alex's neck. Slowly, Alex rose, his movements deliberate, his expression unreadable. He was pushed forward roughly, back into the corridor where the rest of the party stood waiting. He was shoved to the wall with his back facing the Githyanki. The cold stone pressed against his chest, grounding him in the moment. Without hesitation, the female Githyanki unsheathed her dagger and began to carve into Alex's back. The blade cut through cloth and flesh alike, precise and deliberate. Alex remained silent, his face betraying no emotion. The room was eerily quiet except for the wet sound of steel meeting flesh and the rhythmic drip of his blood onto the floor. The lack of reaction seemed to enrage the woman. Her strikes grew more forceful, each slash deeper than the last, carving red lines into his muscle. And yet, Alex remained motionless, enduring the pain without a single sound. When she finally tired of the display, she shoved him forward, sending him stumbling toward his party. "Shadowheart, please heal him," Weil said immediately, his voice tense with barely contained anger. As Alex approached, Weil pressed a healing potion into his hand. "Why did you let her do that?" Weil asked, his voice low, his eyes locked onto the Githyanki warrior with barely restrained fury. Alex uncorked the potion and downed it in one swift motion. "Because it would have been worse if I resisted." Shadowheart approached him with a look of disgust, but nonetheless, she raised her hands and whispered an incantation. Her magic poured into him, sealing the wounds, but her touch was as cold as her expression. "I didn't think you were so tough," she muttered begrudgingly. "Admirable." "Remember the tiefling we met at the mountain pass?" Alex asked, glancing toward Weil. Weil nodded, concern etching his features. "She's chained inside that room," Alex continued, his voice softer now. "Barely alive." Weil's hands clenched into fists, his jaw tightening as his gaze flickered toward the grated door leading to the torture room. The air around him practically vibrated with restrained fury. "I gave her a healing potion." "She should survive," Alex assured him, patting Wile's shoulder. Wile let out a slow breath and nodded, though his eyes lingered on the door for a moment longer before he turned to follow Leslie. As they moved forward, they came to a stop beside an imposing portrait of an old female Githyanki. The painting radiated power, Vlakith's white skin stark against the dark backdrop, her sharp features exuding a cruel, divine authority. In the corner of the painting, an unfamiliar symbol caught their eye, so a flame, bending as though blown by an unseen wind. Vlakith herself, she is both the sun that blinds us and the void that contains us. Praise be, Leslie intoned with reverence, her voice almost hushed. Gale tilted his head, scrutinizing the unfamiliar marking. "What's that symbol, Leslie?" he asked, curiosity sparking in his tone. "Tsk, that's a comet," she responded tersely, her expression unreadable. "A comet? And what is its significance?" Gale pressed further. Leslie's jaw tensed, but she said nothing. Instead, she turned sharply and strode ahead, ending the discussion before it could begin. They passed through the dormitory on their way to the infirmary. The hostility in the air was palpable. Every Githyanki they encountered regarded them with barely concealed disdain, their sneers deepening as they muttered slurs under their breath. It was clear that outsiders, especially ones carrying the infection of the Geik, were unwelcome here. The infirmary itself was a stark chamber. A bear-sized, eyeless and skinless snake-looking creature lay coiled around a silvery metal chair on a raised platform, or a grotesque yet strangely elegant piece of medical equipment. To the left, a Githyanki healer bent over a plate-sized magnifying glass, intently examining a tadpole that writhed within a small vial. Her expression was one of scientific fascination rather than disgust. As the group moved toward her, Alex noticed Wile suddenly stop in his tracks. He followed Wile's gaze to a shadowed corner of the room where a table stood, upon which 3 tadpoles floated in individual jars, suspended in some kind of alchemical solution. It wasn't just Wile who had noticed. A silent, invisible force pulled at all of the Makalak, Shadowheart, Gale, Leslie, Asterion. For a fleeting moment, their eyes locked onto the jars, their thoughts unspoken but shared. "What just happened?" Alex asked Wile, his voice laced with concern. "We'll tell you later," Wile muttered, his gaze flicking between the healer and Alex, as if debating whether to say more. The healer, still absorbed in her work, barely acknowledged them. "Intestinal coloration consistent with samples 231 to 259. She murmured before finally standing up and regarding them with a detached curiosity. "Do you have a question, or are you just going to stand the gawking?" Leslie stepped forward, her presence commanding, eyes burning with indignation. "I am a child of Gith, not discarded rat flesh. Am I not due your respect?" The healer raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Perhaps not." "Be quick. My work is of vital importance. We carry Geik tadpoles and have done so for countless days, yet we show no symptoms. We must enter the Thtisk." At this, the healer's detached expression shifted slightly, her interest peaked. "You are infected but showing no symptoms of cerebral impairment? Fascinating. Either your tadpole is special, or you are. We must find out which." "Go to the Thtisk. I will ensure you are cured," she said, pointing at the strange, fleshy construct on the platform. The writhing, eyeless creature pulsed in anticipation, its sinuous body coiled around a cold, silvery metal chair. Even Githyanki rarely experience those Thtisk. "You are very lucky." Gale eyed the contraption warily. "How does this Thtisk work?" His question fell on deaf ears as the healer turned back to her instruments, already dismissing them from her immediate concern. Leslie stepped forward, her voice thick with reverence. "This Thtisk, Vlakith's purity, distilled. My duty, my right." She turned to Wile, seeking silent approval. He nodded once, his voice steady. "Go ahead, Leslie." "Praise Vlakith." "Let it be done." Without hesitation, she laid down on the cold metal of the chair, the flesh construct tightening its coils around her in response. The healer stepped closer, her voice softer now, almost coaxing. "Sit, child. Let this Thtisk end your suffering. You must focus on the parasite at all times. This Thtisk will do the rest." The device's head moved down closer to Leslie's, its fangs glowing with an eerie white light. As soon as they touched her temples, her body convulsed, and a raw, Guttural scream tore from her throat. The moment it made contact, the party felt a searing pain ignite within their own skulls, as if an unseen blade was splitting their minds apart. I feel like a blade cleaves my mind in two. Impossible pain sears my bones and body in concert with Leslie's, while gasped, clutching his head. Leslie thrashed against the metal restraints, her muscles locking rigid. And Vlakith Tavik Nazin. She chanted desperately, her voice breaking under the agony. Alex instinctively linked his mind with the rest of the party, feeling the unbearable weight of their suffering. The pain was relentless, a vice clamping down on their very essence. Yes, child, speak that Lakit. Meditate on its verses, the healer purred with disturbing excitement, her eyes gleaming with reverence. One by one, the party fell to their knees, clutching their heads. Shadowheart bit back a cry, her fingers digging into the floor. Karlak, usually impervious to pain, was doubled over, teeth clenched hard enough to crack. Only Alex and Glut remained unaffected. Alex's gaze hardened. I can feel her mind ripping and rupturing. This isn't a cure. It's an execution. Get out of there, Leslie. You won't survive this anguish. Well shouted, his voice raw with urgency. Blood was trickling from Leslie's nose, staining her lips. Out of my head. Vlakith Mzathak, Iskaz 8th. Leslie's words were faltering, her resolve cracking under the relentless torment. No, Leslie will die if she remains. While bellowed again. Yes, child. Shma, Zalavlakith. Call your queen. The healer urged, her hands twitching in fervent anticipation. My queen, hear me. Leslie screamed, her eyes wide with desperation, pupils blown out as her consciousness teetered on the edge of oblivion. That thing looks set to kill her, Gale hissed, gripping Alex's arm tightly. Alex's thoughts raced. He turned to Glut, their minds linking in an instant. What are you doing? Glut asked. Trying to save her. Alex focused, reaching out to Leslie's mind. His vision tunneled, warping into something vast and unfathomable. He saw Thema specters of Githyanki past, their fates unraveling in endless suffering, their dying wails carried across the astral sea. Leslie's thoughts were reduced to silver threads, stretching toward the void. Vlakith's presence loomed, vast and terrible. Alex flinched as a cacophony of voices cried out in torment. This Thisk collects memories from the infected and executes them. It is not a cure, it's a death sentence, Alex realized. Leslie's scream ripped through the air one final time before the construct overloaded, exploding in a violent surge of energy. The force sent everyone flying, crashing against the stone walls. A sharp ringing filled the chamber as smoke and shattered metal debris rained down. For a fraction of a second before the explosion, Alex heard something go a whisper, featherlight and insidious, wrapping around Leslie's mind. Let me protect you. Alex's eyes snapped open just as the healer shrieked in fury. No, no, Thisk. What have you done? My life's work is ruined, and yet you live. And so does your parasite. She spat, rage twisting her features. Leslie staggered to her feet, still swaying from the aftershocks of the torment. Her breath was ragged, her body trembling. She clutched her head as if expecting the pain to return. The parasite's dead. I felt it die, she murmured, disbelief heavy in her tone. The healer's fury melted into something almost fascinated. Really? Then all this destruction was merely a symptom of its power. Incredible. A shame we could not extract it alive. It would have been an exceptional specimen. Her smile vanished. In any case, your problem is resolved. Leave me. I must salvage what I can. She pointed to the door dismissively, her voice clipped with frustration. Leslie said nothing. Her hands were still shaking as she turned toward the exit. The rest followed, their expressions grim. The party walked away from the room and stopped by the painting that depicted Vlakith. Leslie halted in front of the portrait, her gaze lingering on the regal yet fearsome depiction of her queen. Her sharp features, usually locked in unwavering confidence, softened for a brief moment. The flicker of doubt in her eyes was subtle but present. Are you all right? Weil asked, his voice low, careful not to tread on fragile ground. Leslie took a slow breath, her hand clenching at her side. I followed protocol. I kept to my faith. Yet this Thisk might have killed me. Someone must have tampered with it. An aberration I can't begin to comprehend. Alex narrowed his eyes slightly, considering her words. Someone tampered with the Divisioba to save you, he thought to himself, though he kept silent. There must be Sharlako, a traitor, the sort that is hunted, slaughtered, and erased from our histories. Few would dare to dishonor their queen. Fewer would be so brazen. Now hurry. We must go to the Ch'tai and inform him of the Thisk tampering, Leslie said, her voice regaining its steel as she turned and strode forward. Before that, shouldn't we look for where the eggs are kept? Astarion interjected smoothly, though there was an unmistakable glint of mischief in his eyes. Leslie suddenly stopped mid-step, her body rigid with tension. Slowly, she turned to glare at Astarion, who, despite his usual bravado, took an instinctive step back. Still planning to go through with your scheme? Fine. Follow me, she said tersely, her voice laced with barely restrained irritation. The door ahead opened, revealing an expansive chamber, a massive cave illuminated by shafts of golden sunlight filtering through the rocky ceiling above. The air was thick with humidity, tinged with the acrid scent of damp stone and something organic. Before them stretched a large, shallow pool of water. The surface shimmered with an unnatural hue, azure green, with glistening golden motes that danced and swirled in lazy eddies. Above the water, perched on narrow stone ramparts, stood 3 Githyanki warriors. 2 flanked the left and right, their crossbows slung but within easy reach. The third knelt at the edge of the farthest platform, his gaze fixed on something within the water, a single green egg. The egg was only partially submerged, its surface sleek and pulsating with an eerie, bioluminescent glow. Dark, vein-like tendrils wrapped around its shell, faintly pulsing with each ripple of the water. Entirely too empty. I'd expected to see 15 eggs, at the very least, Leslie murmured, scanning the chamber with a deepening frown. The group cautiously approached a Githyanki standing near the water's edge, his stern gaze locking onto them as they neared. He regarded them with mild suspicion, his stance relaxed yet unmistakably ready. Istikar permitted to view the birthing pools? These are strange times. Step carefully while here. Our hatchery is protected by lethal safeguards. I do not wish to pick your remains from them, the Githyanki warrior said, his tone clipped but nonchalant. I thought a hatchery would have more eggs? Weil asked, his brows furrowed in curiosity. Most have hatched. Only one remains, monitored by Vashkoku, the caretaker of our young, the warrior responded, nodding toward the lone figure crouched over the egg. You may speak to Vash if you wish, but stay away from the egg. There will be no second warning. Weil looked at the others, nodding once. Everyone stay here while I go and speak with Vash. Wait, I'm coming with you, Leslie said firmly. Without waiting for approval, they both stepped forward, moving over a series of uneven stones that led to the far rampart. The rocks were slick beneath their boots, the warmth of the air clashing with the damp chill radiating from the pool below. As they reached the final ledge, they pulled themselves up onto the stone platform where Vash stood, his back still turned. You can tell Kithrak Thruin that my position has not changed. The egg requires more time. Furthermore, he stopped mid-sentence as he turned and realized he was not addressing his expected superior. His piercing gaze narrowed as he scrutinized them. You are not from Kreshialek. What are you doing here? Alex's hearing was trained on them. I'm curious about the egg you guard, Weil said. There is little to be curious about. It is taking its time hatching, nothing more. Most caretakers would not give the child its fair chance, but I shall. There could be greatness in that shell. His voice is tinged with weariness. It's the voice of a man who's fought the inevitable for a long time, Alex thought. What will happen to this egg if it doesn't hatch? Weil asked. Kithrak Thruin will give orders to destroy it. She will say it's a weakling. I'll give it a while longer, and if it doesn't hatch, it will have proven her right. Why risk its life at all? Give it to me, I'll take care of it, Weil said, putting his silver tongue to work. You've no Vash instincts about you at all. Still, the captain's due for an inspection any day now, and if she sees it here. Tell me, what will you do with it if I entrust it to you? Weil opened his mouth to offer an answer, but Leslie was quicker. "I'll see that it becomes the greatest geek slayer you've ever seen." Weil was stunned for a moment by Leslie's words. "Just be aware that adoptive party does not turn to sentimentality. Though it could be the only way this one reaches adulthood, I fear I can no longer ignore that Kithrak-Thruin's patience has its limits." "Very well. Here, take these. They will aid you in approaching the egg," Vash said as he handed them a pair of gloves. Leslie was the one to snatch them. "Fighting battles already and it's not even born yet," Vash said as his gaze moved back to the egg. Leslie put on the gloves and jumped from rampart to rampart until she reached the egg next to a stone platform barely above the water. Something was under the egg, but Alex couldn't see it clearly. Leslie reached for the egg and gently patted it. A small smile appeared on her face. She gently picked up the egg and teleported next to the party on the other side of the cave. Everyone kept staring at her as she gently moved her hand around the egg, a small smile on her face. For a moment, everyone wondered if this was really the Leslie they knew until she raised her eyes and snarled at them before turning her attention back to the egg. They walked back to the main corridor heading to where Kithrak-Thruin's quarters were, but stopped when they heard someone shouting. "Perhaps a tadpole has already addled your brain." "Is that it?" The party headed to where the noise was coming from, into a training room. Githyanki were standing left and right, watching like hyenas what was happening in the middle of the room. An older Githyanki male adorned with a cape was kicking a young male Githyanki who was laying on the floor, his arm around his head. "Kaki, we are training to fight Geik." "You think they will hesitate?" "They won't need to, if we keep killing each other for them. It's stupid." "Orpha." "Silence," the adorned Githyanki shouted before kicking him harder. "It seems your childish prattling is attracting an audience." He paused as he threw a side eye at the party. "You fight again. This time, daggers only." "And to the death as instructed." "Who wants to challenge this sniveling istic?" he asked, ceasing his kicks and looking around the room. The Githyanki on the side were whispering among themselves. Alex stepped forward with measured confidence, his sharp gaze locking onto the adorned Githyanki like a predator assessing its prey. The air in the room thickened with tension, the whispered murmurs of the onlookers dying out as they turned their attention to the unfolding challenge. The Githyanki's cold, calculating eyes flickered with disdain, but behind that veneer of arrogance was something else: annoyance, perhaps even uncertainty. "You, Tsk, my students do not waste their time fighting such weaklings. But as we seem so intent on doing things differently today, why not?" Alex said nothing, merely tilting his head slightly, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips as he crouched down, his fingers curling around the hilt of a simple, unadorned dagger lying on the cold stone floor. He twirled it once between his fingers before gripping it firmly. The weight was familiar, almost nostalgic. On the other side, the young Githyanki hesitated, his hand trembling as he picked up his own weapon. His eyes darted between Alex and the brutal instructor, uncertainty and defiance warring within him. "What are you waiting for? Begin!" the adorned Githyanki barked, impatience lining his tone. The young Githyanki took one shaky step forward before his resolve crumbled. The dagger slipped from his fingers, clattering loudly against the floor. His shoulders sagged in silent defeat. "I refuse." "There has to be a better way." A disgusted sneer twisted the instructor's face. Without hesitation, he turned his back on the boy and fixated his attention solely on Alex. "Kill him, and put us all out of the misery." Alex's smirk deepened, but there was no humor in it, only an eerie, unsettling amusement. He slowly turned his gaze toward the instructor and spoke in a voice as smooth as silk but carrying the weight of an unshakable challenge. "If you beat me in a duel." The room fell into a hushed silence, as if the very walls held their breath. Eyes darted between the two warriors, anticipation crackling in the air like an impending storm. The instructor scoffed, though his fingers tightened subtly around the hilt of his blade. "Anistic wishes to challenge me to a duel?" Alex took a single, deliberate step forward, his voice laced with condescension. "Are you deaf?" A ripple of murmurs surged through the gathered Githyanki warriors, their expressions flickering with something between intrigue and disbelief. The insult struck home. Alex could see it in the slight twitch of the instructor's jaw, the way his breathing grew heavier despite his attempts to remain composed. For a moment, The instructor was utterly still. Then, with a sharp exhale, he unclipped his cape, letting it fall to the floor with a heavy swish. His dagger gleamed under the dim light as he brought it forth, his grip white-knuckled with restrained fury. Without ceremony, he roughly shoved the young Githyanki aside, clearing the space between him and Alex. "I can't wait for my dagger to pierce your skull," the instructor snarled, his voice dripping with venom. Alex didn't move. He simply tilted his head, his smirk fading as his face settled into a look of deathly calm. The moment stretched, taut as a bowstring. Asterion shivered, his normally composed face pale as he hugged himself. "What is this feeling?" he muttered under his breath, rubbing his arms as goosebumps crawled up his skin. Weil swallowed hard, forcing himself to remain still despite the way his instincts screamed at him to step back. "I don't a broken Barno," he admitted, his voice almost reverent. Watching Alex in this moment felt like standing at the edge of a chasm, staring into an abyss that stared right back. "Watch closely," Karlach whispered, her voice tight with uncharacteristic seriousness. Her burning eyes locked onto Alex, unblinking. The Githyanki lunged forward with the speed and precision of a seasoned warrior, his dagger gleaming in the light, aimed straight for Alex's heart. But Alex was ready. He sidestepped the attack with fluid grace, his own dagger flashing out to deflect the blow. The sound of metal striking metal echoed through the room, followed by a flurry of movement as the two combatants engaged in a deadly dance. The Githyanki pressed his attack, his movements swift and brutal. He slashed and stabbed with ruthless efficiency, each strike meant to kill. But Alex met him blow for blow, his reflexes honed by decades of military training. He parried a vicious thrust and countered with a kick to the Githyanki's midsection, sending him stumbling back. Instead of advancing, he simply stood there, waiting for his opponent to recover. The Githyanki recovered quickly, his eyes blazing with fury. He lunged again, their blades clashing in a shower of sparks. The room seemed to hold its breath as the two warriors battled. Every strike, every parry was a testament to their skill and determination. The Githyanki's face was a mask of rage and desperation, while Alex's expression remained cold and focused. The fight moved across the room, the combatants using every inch of space. They leapt over tables, rolled across the floor, and used the walls for leverage. The Githyanki teleported behind Alex, but Alex raised his leg and kicked him in the chin. The blow was so powerful that it raised and sent the Githyanki flying. Again, Alex waited for his opponent to recover. The Githyanki warrior shook his head and spat a bloody phlegm on the floor. He snarled, his rage boiling over. With a guttural roar, he charged at Alex, his movements wild and desperate. Alex effortlessly sidestepped the attack, tripping the Githyanki and sending him crashing to the ground. As the Githyanki scrambled to his feet, Alex allowed a small, cold smile to play on his lips. He could sense the warrior's growing frustration and fear. The Githyanki attacked again, his strikes becoming more erratic and less precise. Alex parried each blow with ease, his movements almost lazy in comparison. With a swift, decisive motion, Alex disarmed the Githyanki, sending his dagger skittering across the floor. The Githyanki stood there, breathing heavily, his eyes wide with disbelief. Alex stepped closer, his presence imposing. "You have no chance against me," Alex said, his voice cold and commanding. The Githyanki's defiance faltered. He glanced around the room, realizing the futility of his situation. His shoulders sagged, and he dropped to his knees, bowing his head in submission. The room was silent, the tension dissipating as the fight came to an end. Alex dropped his dagger and looked across the room. Every Githyanki was staring at him with fear and a tinge of respect. "That was an amazing fight," Karlach said with a smile, wrapping her arm around Alex's shoulder. She let go a moment later, seeing smoke rising from Alex's clothes. The young Githyanki that had been beaten came to him, sparks in his eyes. "That was amazing. I've never seen someone defeat the Savage. He's always telling us how we have to be ruthless," that death is the only mercy we deliver. But you showed us why we should be strong to protect those who are weaker than us. You are just like he. Never mind. Alex looked at him for a moment before he spoke. Your teacher has forgotten what truly makes a warrior. Victory goes to the one who has no thought of himself. You said I'm just like someone. Are you referring to Orpheus? Alex's words hung in the air, an unspoken challenge against the indoctrination of the Githyanki. The room remained still, the weight of forbidden knowledge pressing against the gathered warriors like an unseen force. The young Githyanki's hands trembled slightly. Leslie, standing a few paces behind, stiffened at the mention of Orpheus. She was surprised that Alex knew about him. The very name of the rebel prince was treason, a whisper that could get a Githyanki executed. Yet here was Alex, speaking it aloud without fear. The true prince. He's so strong, and wise. And he rides a comet. A comet. The young Githyanki's excitement was tangible, his voice rising with the fervor of a believer grasping at a forbidden truth. But just as quickly, his expression darkened, and his voice softened to a whisper. We're forbidden to talk about him. They say Vlakith knows if you even think his name. The firelight cast flickering shadows across the chamber, elongating the figures of the gathered warriors. Alex noticed how some of them averted their eyes, while others leaned in ever so slightly, curiosity outweighing fear for just a moment. Even those loyal to Vlakith could not silence the ember of doubt that flickered in the darkest corners of their minds. Where did you get the book? Alex asked, keeping his voice steady, measured. A group of warriors came. Outsiders, on a mission for Vlakith herself. Savash Kethk made us clean their armor, and I found it, inside one of the breastplates. The young warrior hesitated, his gaze falling to the stone floor as though ashamed. I wish I knew who it belonged to. I have so many questions. Hopefully, one day I'll find them. Alex studied him for a moment before speaking again. Sounds like quite the book. Can I have it? The young warrior's grip on the disc tightened. You want ... but I ... yeah. Alex took a step closer, his voice lowering but not losing its edge. You endanger yourself by carrying this around. A long silence stretched between them before, finally, the young Githyanki exhaled sharply, as if releasing something deep within. Fine, take it, he said, reluctantly extending the stone disc. Alex accepted it without hesitation, his fingers brushing against the cool surface. The etchings were intricate, ancient symbols carved with care, their meanings long buried beneath the weight of Vlakith's rule. It's so stupid we can't read it. It's just a story, it's not even true. I'll do my best to forget what it said. Thank you for taking it, the young warrior murmured, though his expression betrayed the conflict within. Alex placed a firm but reassuring hand on his shoulder. The young Githyanki flinched at first, the ingrained instinct of a warrior reacting to unexpected touch. But when he saw no harm in Alex's gesture, he relaxed, his shoulders loosening ever so slightly. Hopes and dreams are the light that guides us through the darkness, Alex said, his voice calm, steady, an anchor in the storm of uncertainty. Gale, standing off to the side, let out a small breath, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. Those are some beautiful words. Not everyone seemed to agree. Shadowheart's expression darkened, her arms crossed as she glared at Alex, displeasure radiating from her like a cold wind. Leslie, too, remained silent, her gaze unreadable as she looked at the disc in Alex's hands. Whether it was fear, curiosity, or something else entirely, she did not say. Leslie, does the creche have a merchant? Asterion asked, his voice echoing slightly in the vast hall. Leslie looked up from the egg she was cradling, her expression unreadable, and pointed to the right without a word. Thank you for sparing me the attention, Asterion replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Leslie didn't react, much to Asterion's growing frustration. Her focus remained on the egg, as if the rest of the world had faded away. With a dramatic sigh, Asterion led the way through the door Leslie had indicated. Beyond it, they spotted an adorned Githyanki woman wearing a red cap, her posture rigid with the air of someone perpetually unimpressed. Barrels, crates, and chests were neatly stacked beside her, but despite the orderly arrangement, the scent of rust and old metal clung to the air. Ugh, blood, rust, skva. Is there no odious substance not smeared on this delivery? the woman muttered as she inspected the crate, her nose wrinkling in distaste. I heard this plane was disgusting, but I didn't think it would be this bad. Care to trade? I guarantee all my stuff's spotless, Weil said with a charming smile. The merchant turned her sharp gaze on him, eyeing him with the kind of suspicion reserved for thieves and liars. Fine, but your paraphernalia had better be pristine. What are you looking for? Show us the best stuff you have, Asterion interjected, his tone dripping with anticipation. She studied the group for a long moment before turning around and walking to a large chest. She rummaged through it, muttering to herself, before pulling out a pair of gloves and a dagger. The gloves were made of fine brown leather, faint traces of magic clinging to them like an unseen aura. But it was the dagger that truly captured their attention. The weapon was breathtaking. The blade had an intricate, almost lightning bolt-like pattern, its jagged edges gleaming with a metallic gold hue. At its base, embedded just above the hilt, was a crimson gem pulsing faintly with latent power. The hilt itself bore elaborate engravings, its structure both elegant and commanding. A radiant purple glow surrounded the weapon, a clear sign of its potent enchantment. Weil turned his head just in time to see Asterion practically salivating at the sight of the dagger. How much? Weil asked, bracing himself. The gloves are 860 gold pieces. The knife is 1,200, the merchant stated flatly. Weil started sweating. That's a lot of gold, he admitted, shifting his weight uncomfortably. Take it or leave it. I still have items that need cleaning, she replied curtly, returning to her work. Before Weil could stammer out a response, Alex stepped forward. Without a word, he reached into one of his pockets and produced a small pouch. He loosened the drawstring and tilted it open, revealing an assortment of glittering gems that shimmered under the dim lighting. The merchant's eyes gleamed as she snatched the pouch from Alex's outstretched hand. She sifted through the gemstones, scrutinizing them one by one before giving a small nod of approval. This will cover the gloves. Alex took the gloves and, without hesitation, tossed them toward Asterion. The spawn barely caught them, fumbling for a moment before holding them up, his brow furrowed in confusion. He stared at the gloves, then at Alex, then back at the gloves. What? Why? Asterion asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. Alex shrugged. Do you want me to take them back? Number. Please forget that I asked, Asterion said quickly, clutching the gloves tightly as if afraid they'd be snatched away. He slid them onto his hands, flexing his fingers experimentally, and for a brief moment, a flicker of something unguarded crossed his face, a glimmer of genuine gratitude buried beneath years of cultivated cynicism. Without any more money to spend, they headed for the captain's quarters. They stopped at the door for a moment. Weil turned around and looked at the group one last time before opening the door and stepping inside, only to stop abruptly. The room had at least a dozen Githyanki, all armed and standing at attention. Their golden eyes flickered with suspicion, their hands resting on their weapons as if they expected a fight at any moment. Please, Chtai, I can explain, a female Githyanki said, her tone urgent, as she followed behind a male Githyanki. The male, clearly of higher rank, wore armor distinct from the rest. It was darker, its hue almost black, adorned with gems that shimmered with deep purple instead of the standard crimson. The male turned around, his gaze cold and piercing as he studied the woman who had spoken. The latest batch of cultists knew nothing of the astral prism. They were just trying to find the Moonrise Towers. They all headed there. My Jis have drafted plans to assault the tower. They are ready to fight, Chtai. We could sift the missing artifact from the tower's ashes, if you would give use. The woman pleading was stopped. Quiet. Find the astral prism, Thruna. My patience falters, the male snapped, his tone sharp as a blade. Yes, Chtai. Thrun responded, bowing her head slightly before turning to the other Githyanki in the room. You heard him. Go. Despite her order, the gathered warriors hesitated, their eyes shifting back to the Chtai for confirmation. Do as she says. She remains your Kithrak. For now. The words hung heavy in the air, a subtle warning wrapped in authority. Thrun's jaw clenched, her face tightening into a scowl, but she said nothing. As the Chtai and his entourage disappeared through a metallic arch, she walked briskly toward a silvery device adorned with red gemstones arranged like a peacock's tail. With practiced precision, She removed one of the central gems, activating a golden force field that shimmered into place, sealing the path behind them. While shifted uneasily as the remaining Githyanki left the room, some casting venomous glares at the group as they departed. When the last warrior was gone, the party stepped fully inside. The chamber was large, with an air of both regality and brutality. To the left stood neatly stacked crates and chairs, a notice board cluttered with maps and scribbled notes. Ahead, near the now sealed passageway, stood a Githyanki woman, rigid as a statue, her expression unreadable. To the right, before a roaring fireplace, stretched a long table laden with scattered papers. Thrun paced beside it, her movements tense, controlled. But it was the scene beside the table that drew their immediate attention. Two wolves, their massive forms sleek and powerful, feasted upon the remains of two gnomes. Blood painted the floor in gruesome patterns, staining the wolves' fur as they tore into flesh and bone. Their golden eyes flicked toward the newcomers, muscles tensing, prepared to strike at their master's command. As the group approached, Thrun halted her pacing and turned to face them. The wolves stilled, their ears pricked, awaiting a signal. A group of Istik. In my Koresh. You are one of the mercenaries sent to bring the weapon? Thrun's voice was like tempered steel, calm, but brimming with authority. Those Istik are with me, honored Kithrak, Leslie stated firmly, her grip tightening around the egg she carried. Thrun's gaze lingered on the egg, her expression unreadable before shifting back to the group. So noted. But my question goes unanswered. Do you bring the weapon? Weil turned slightly, his eyes flicking to Alex for a fraction of a second before exhaling and stepping forward. I think I have what you're looking for, he said, producing the artifact. Shadowheart tensed, her brows knitting together as a flicker of concern crossed her face. I sincerely hope you know what you're doing, she murmured, her fingers instinctively hovering near her spell components. Thrun's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the artifact. Shmazalevlakith. Give it to me, she commanded, her voice edged with hunger. The artifact trembled in Weil's grasp, as though resisting the idea of being handed over. Steeling himself, he extended his hands and placed the artifact on the table. It hovered for a brief moment before gliding toward Thrun, its crimson glow shifting to a deep, ominous purple as it came under her influence. Yes, she breathed. There it is. Exactly as described. The Inquisition will finally come to an end. But just as quickly as her triumph had come, it was ripped away. The artifact suddenly shuddered violently, its energy surging unpredictably. Sparks lighting crackled across its surface before it snapped free from her pull. It shot back toward Shadowheart's hand as if tethered to her, its glow now an intense red-orange, pulsing like a heartbeat. Skva. Trickery, heresy, how did you manipulate it when I cannot? Thrun hissed, her expression a mix of rage and bewilderment. Her gaze snapped to Shadowheart, narrowing with suspicion. It appears you have been chosen, Istik. You are lucky it is not for me to question why. Go seek the Inquisitor below, and take the cursed thing with you. Without another word, she stalked past them to the fan-shaped device beside the archway, shoving the gem back into place. The golden force field flickered and then dissipated, leaving the path ahead open. With an irritated wave, she motioned for the party to pass through. Shadowheart hesitated, her eyes darting toward the two monstrous wolves tearing into the gnome corpses. The creatures, their thick fur matted with blood, gnawed at the bones with relish, sharp fangs gleaming under the dim light. One of them raised its head, yellow eyes locking onto her as it let out a low, guttural growl. It was as if it sensed her fear and enjoyed it. In a world of demons and dragons, you're scared of wolves? Astarion quipped, raising an amused eyebrow as he noticed her rigid stance. Everyone is frightened by something, Shadowheart snapped, but her voice was unsteady. The wolf stepped closer, its lips curling into a snarl, and she instinctively leapt backward, nearly colliding with Karlak. Get away from me, she shouted, her breath coming fast. Karlak, noticing the distress in her companion, glared at the beast. One step forward, and the wolf immediately recoiled, lowering its head and returning to its gruesome meal. Once they were safely out of the room, All eyes turned to Shadowheart. She shifted uncomfortably under their scrutiny before letting out a breath. I suppose you've noticed I'm not terribly fond of wolves. They are ravenous predators with fangs like daggers, so it's hardly an irrational fear to harbor. You've all been decent to me so far. Maybe if you can, don't make me face any more of them. At least not alone. Karlach gave her a reassuring pat on the back. Everyone's got their own fears. We won't judge yours. Right, Astarion? Astarion let out an exaggerated sigh, rolling his eyes. Yes, we all have our little phobias. Just don't expect me to start hugging stakes anytime soon. Shadowheart gave a small, appreciative smile before composing herself. The party stepped into the next chamber, a massive cavern dominated by a single wide bridge stretching over a void so deep it seemed endless. The air was heavy, thick with the weight of something ancient and powerful lurking in the shadows. Every footstep echoed ominously against the cold stone, the vast emptiness below swallowing every sound. Weil exhaled, glancing at Alex. "I'm really glad you're with us." No one responded, but they all shared a look, a silent acknowledgement that whatever lay ahead was something they had to face together. Karlach stepped forward, pressing her palms against the metal doors at the end of the bridge. With a deep breath, she shoved them open, the heavy doors groaning in protest as they swung wide, revealing the vast, ruined chamber beyond. At the center of the room, sitting beside a round silvery platform, was the Ch'tai. Scattered around the chamber were dozens of Githyanki warriors, their weapons resting at their sides but their sharp gazes locked onto the intruders. The air hummed with barely contained hostility. The Ch'tai did not rise, but his gaze lifted, settling on Lesl with an almost predatory curiosity. "My Ardents spoke of one of our kin that escaped the crashing Gake slave vessel," he mused, his voice calm yet commanding. "Vlakith's justice in flesh," Lesl declared, bowing her head in reverence. A thin smile crossed the Ch'tai's face. "You have accomplished much, child. I am pleased to finally meet you." He let the words linger before his expression darkened. "I heard there is so much goblin blood on your hands that it soaks into their children's nightmares." Then, as swiftly as the moment came, it passed. His tone sharpened. "To business. I suspect you plucked something precious from the Gake ship. Something that belongs to us. The weapon. Give it to me." Lesl turned her eyes to Weil. "Do it. Do not disobey the Inquisitor." Weil hesitated only a second before stepping forward, raising the artifact. A pulse ran through the air the moment his hands left it, the weight of the relic shifting as if reacting to the moment. "So, it is found." A voice cut through the silence, ethereal and commanding. The silvery platform behind the Ch'tai began to glow, a golden light bleeding into the air, warping and twisting until it coalesced into the towering form of Vlakith herself. Her eyes burned like twin stars, scorching with the fire of absolute dominion. Her gaze fell upon them, her presence suffocating, an overwhelming force pressing down on their very souls. All around them, the Githyanki warriors fell to their knees, their heads bowed in reverence. Even Lesl sank to one knee, her face alight with something between awe and terror. The room seemed to shrink, as if all existence was drawn into the blazing gaze of the Lich Queen. Vlakith had come. "This is bad," Alex thought, forcing himself to appear calm. The voices of the Githyanki slain by the Zthisk still echoed in his mind, filled with anguish and betrayal. They had been deceived, sacrificed, and discarded all for a cause they had believed in. And now, Vlakith stood before them, her burning gaze consuming everything in the chamber. "Vlakith Gagshkath's AI?" the Ch'tai intoned, his forehead nearly touching the cold stone floor. "My queen, Shkath's AI?" Lesl echoed, lowering her head with unwavering devotion. "You are permitted to look upon me." "You are invited to kneel," Vlakith commanded, her gaze sweeping over the still-standing party. "The deathless queen has spoken." "You will obey," Lesl urged, her voice filled with both awe and warning. Taking a steadying breath, Weil was the first to drop to one knee. One by one, the rest of the party followed, though hesitation clung to their movements. Even Alex, despite every instinct screaming against it, lowered his head. Vlakith's projection loomed larger, her form shimmering with radiant power. She knelt, her face unnervingly close to Lesl's. "These attendants you keep, or you taught them well?" "My child." "My Lesl." Lesl's breath hitched. "Shma, Zalavlakith, you know me. Erlon of Clear speaks most highly, as did Alchair before him, Vlakith said as she straightened once more. You seek purity. I may yet grant it. Then she turned, kneeling again, this time leveling her piercing gaze at Weil. Istik. You bear that which is ours. But are you friend, or are you thief? Weil clenched his jaw, meeting her gaze despite the pressure crushing down on him. I'm just the one who found your weapon. Vlakith's lips curled into something resembling amusement. You will be rewarded beyond your mortal reckoning. This weapon you carry, the astral prisma, it is corrupted, she said, and the artifact floated effortlessly into her spectral hand. I will cleanse it for you, my queen. Tell me how, Leslie said immediately, her voice eager, pleading. Vlakith studied her for a moment before speaking. There is someone inside. Their mind is warped, broken or blight. They are an agent of the Grand Design, sent to sabotage the astral prism, our last line of defense against the return of the Illithid Empire. As long as they live, the prism is compromised. Kill him. Do this, and I will cleanse you and your allies. Do Thesa and ascend. A sharp intake of breath passed through Leslie's lips. Ascension, my queen. An honor gained, a burden borne. Her gaze flickered toward Weil, sharp as steel. You must accept. Refuse, and you will know my fury. Weil shook his head. I can't do that. The person inside protects me from the absolute. Without him, I am nothing but another pawn. Vlakith's projection darkened, her burning eyes flaring dangerously. You are being lied to. I will be obeyed. Her voice was a storm of Shnik force, lashing at their minds, filling them with unbearable pressure. Skva. Do not defy my queen. Leslie roared, gripping the hilt of her sword. The walls trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. A deep rumble shook the room. And then, with the force of a meteor, something crashed through the roof, sending shockwaves through the chamber. The impact hurled them back, the sheer power of the descent cracking the floor beneath them. Stone and metal groaned under the sudden weight. As the dust settled, Vlakith's projection flickered, her form wavering like a candle in a storm. Silence fell upon the chamber, thick and suffocating. Then, a voice gravelly, commanding, and unmistakably amused broke the quiet. Obey this bitch. The dust cleared, revealing a figure standing in the wreckage. The silvery platform shattered beneath his feet. Tall and imposing, Zeus raised his head, his gaze sweeping across the stunned Githyanki. Weil's breath caught in his throat. Zeus. A few minutes ago, after securing the egg, Weil felt a tug in his mind. His gaze flickered around the room until he spotted Glut staring at him, tapping his helmet. The subtle gesture carried a silent message. Weil inhaled sharply and allowed his mental barriers to lower. Almost immediately, he felt another presence settle into his consciousness. Can you hear me? A familiar voice echoed within his mind. He recognized it instantly as Zeus. Yes, I do, Weil responded, his heartbeat quickening. Good. As you realized, Leslie's devotion to her queen is too great, and I doubt she will abandon it so easily. Zeus's tone was firm, yet it carried an undercurrent of concern. Weil clenched his fists. He knew Zeus was right. Leslie had been raised in the unyielding grip of Vlakith's doctrine. Tearing away her faith would be like trying to rip stone from a mountain with bare hands. Play along. Extract as much information as you can from the captain. And if things go south, I will intervene. The words had barely faded from Weil's mind when the present moment came crashing down upon them. No. What have you done? Leslie's furious voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Taka. Vijtai bellowed, his fury palpable as he unsheathed his sword, his glare locked onto Zeus. The room crackled with tension, every muscle in every warrior coiled, ready to strike. Tazith. Vijtai roared, bringing his blade high over his head, prepared to carve Alex in two. Zeus braced himself, ready to dodge, but something vicious and unseen slammed into his mind. A psychic assault, powerful, relentless but not enough. Zeus shifted his arm into a shield just in time to absorb the incoming strike. The force of the impact sent vibrations up the Vijtai's arm, and for a split second, his grip faltered on his weapon. Leave now, Zeus commanded, his voice sharp as steel. A Githyanki appeared in the flicker of mist beside him, blade aimed for his ribs. Without hesitation, Zeus spun and delivered a brutal kick. The sickening crunch of ribs cracking under the force sent the Githyanki skidding across the floor, gasping for breath. Gale, already chanting under his breath, poured his dwindling energy into forming a dimensional door. The strain was evident as his legs wobbled, his complexion paled, and just as the spell was complete, he nearly collapsed. While lunged forward, catching him before he could fall. A Githyanki warrior lunged, sword poised to strike before the portal could be used. Karlach intercepted with a thunderous battle cry, her axe clashing violently against the enemy's blade. Sparks erupted, steel screaming against steel. She pushed forward, trying to cleave through her opponent, but the Githyanki was swift, retreating out of her reach with inhuman agility. "We are not leaving you here," Karlach shouted, her voice raw with defiance. Her grip on her weapon tightened as she prepared for another strike. "This place is about to be flooded with Githyanki. Go away already." Zeus's voice cut through the battlefield, sharp and commanding. One by one, the group stepped through the portal, urgency pushing them forward. Karlach was the last to linger, her eyes locking onto Zeus's for a single, fleeting moment. Then, with a reluctant growl, she stepped through the shimmering portal. The moment she vanished, the Chtai barked an order, his voice filled with venom. "Focus on the armored one. We will track the others once we cut him down." Zeus inhaled deeply, his grip tightening around the flames licking at his fingertips. Twin scimitars, forged from pure fire, materialized in his hands. The temperature in the room surged, the air warping with intense heat. Beneath his feet, the marble flooring began to bubble and melt, tendrils of molten rock curling at the edges. He tilted his head. "Finally, I can go all out. Let's see how strong these so-called elites really are." Zeus responded, his tone eager. The Githyanki warriors quickly adjusted their strategy, creating distance between themselves and Alex, resorting to ranged attacks. Arrows and bolts whizzed through the air, crackling with psionic energy, but Alex was already on the move. He prepared to phase through the strikes, his form flickering between states of matter until his mind buckled under the strain. A sudden wave of dizziness hit him like a crashing tide, making the room spin. His control over his elemental energy wavered, his senses fraying under the relentless battle. Gritting his teeth, he forced his focus onto the weapons of his enemies. The moment his willpower latched onto the metal, their swords and spears started to glow, the temperature rising to unbearable levels. The Githyanki yelped in pain, dropping their searing weapons as the burning heat licked their hands. Their momentary distraction was all Alex needed. With a pulse of raw power, he phase-shifted next to the nearest Githyanki warrior and, with a single stroke, decapitated him. His arm elongated, shifting into a deadly, sinewy whip, which he lashed out in a wide arc. The strike was merciless, cutting through two more warriors, their bodies collapsing in a gruesome display. The remaining two Githyanki, one of them the Chtai, exchanged a quick glance. The subordinate made a split-second decision, invoking Misty Step to teleport across the room. As he reached a secluded corner, he began weaving a dimensional door, the shimmering portal revealing a bustling cityscape beyond. He had nearly made his escape when, suddenly, his body convulsed violently. Blood streamed from his ears, eyes, and nose as he collapsed, lifeless, onto the cold stone floor. The Chitai's expression darkened. His escape was no longer an option, and he knew it. With grim determination, he straightened his stance, conjuring twin ethereal blades in his hands while three more spectral swords hovered around him, shifting and twirling like hungry vipers. Alex dismissed his own fiery scimitars, absorbing the ambient heat back into his body. His right arm transformed, shifting into a blade of condensed energy, its surface an eerie blue with edges wreathed in molten crimson. He and the Chtai locked eyes, understanding that this would be the final clash. Without hesitation, they both lunged. The Chtai sent his three floating blades toward Alex in a rapid strike, each one slicing through the air with deadly precision. They pierced Alex's body, but instead of physical wounds, they carved into his mind, sending searing pain through his skull. His vision wavered, but his momentum did not falter. Their swords clashed. Sparks erupted as Alex's blade met the Chitai's twin swords. The force of the impact reverberated through the room, sending shockwaves through the marble floor. For a split second, time seemed to slow, and the Ch'tai's swords shattered. His eyes widened in horror, the realization of his impending doom flickering in his gaze. Skva. He barely had time to whisper before Alex's blade cleaved through him. His body split in two, his expression frozen in disbelief as he fell. Alex exhaled, his arm shifting back to its normal form. He consumed their remains, their memories flooding into him. The Ch'tai Wargaz's knowledge was particularly potent to a warrior who had lived for centuries, fought in countless battles, and carried the weight of endless bloodshed. He barely had a moment to process before he felt more minds converging on his location. Reinforcements were coming. He had drawn too much attention. Alex's phase shifted to the chamber's entrance, slamming the doors shut behind him. His hands morphed, growing elongated fingers tipped with small, circular vents. He wove thick strands of web across the doorway, sealing it tight. "This should buy me some time," he murmured. Turning swiftly, he moved deeper into the structure. He stopped before an ancient wall, flanked by two statues. Below each one, a small mechanism hummed faintly. Without hesitation, Alex conjured a blob of corrosive slime and hurled it against the wall. The stone hissed and softened under the chemical reaction, and with a firm push, he collapsed the weakened barrier, revealing a hidden passageway. The tunnel led downward, eventually opening into a grand hall segmented by semi-opaque golden force fields. Their luminescence pulsed like a living entity, radiant and warm. Alex approached, placing his hands against the shimmering energy. A soothing sensation washed over him, reminiscent of Silene's magic on the full moon night, a warmth that soothed the turmoil in his mind. He focused, drawing the energy into himself. The barrier flickered, then cracked. He stepped back just in time as a crystalline core shattered at his feet. This must have been its power source, he mused, stepping forward into the next section. To his left, a device emanated waves of golden energy, flowing outward like an ethereal tide. At its core, two vibrant blue crystals pulsed with untapped energy. Alex leapt onto the ceiling, using his webbing to lower himself toward the device. Carefully, he placed his hands upon the crystals, siphoning their power. Their glow dulled, then faded entirely, before splintering into fragments. The device fell silent. The energy wave ceased, with the defenses disabled. Alex turned to the final barrier. He reached forward, his fingers brushing against the golden surface, and with the same steady focus, he began to unravel its power. The path ahead was open. The hall led to a vast cavern where a grand staircase ascended towards an enormous platform, suspended over what seemed to be a bottomless abyss. The platform, wide as a battlefield, bore a golden emblem of the sun at its center, its radiant glow casting long, ethereal shadows against the cave walls. Suspended above the altar in the middle of the platform, a mace hovered, exuding waves of golden light that bathed the cavern in a warm, divine radiance. Encircling the mace stood 5 golden armored sentinels, their flawless, ornate plating gleaming in the holy light. The cracks in their armor pulsed with an inner glow, revealing the divine energy animating them. Though unmoving, they emanated an unmistakable presence, a silent warning to any who dared approach the sacred relic. Alex cautiously ascended the stairs, his gaze never leaving the constructs. The sentinels twitched slightly, their hollow visors locking onto him, yet they did not attack. A flicker of recognition seemed to ripple through them, as though they sensed the energy flowing within him, the same golden force that now coursed through his body from his earlier absorption of the force field. They must be confused, Alex thought. They see me as both an intruder and one of their own. The constructs remained still until he drew too close to the mace. Without hesitation, Alex's arms morphed into wrecking ball-like masses. With a powerful swing, he shattered the first sentinel, its golden pieces clattering across the platform like discarded armor. One by one, the others fell, each collapsing under his devastating blows until nothing remained but empty shells. Now alone with the relic, Alex took a closer look at the mace. It was a masterpiece of divine craftsmanship, a dark, ornately adorned shaft supporting a radiant, star-like head. A brilliant central orb pulsed within, surrounded by golden spikes that refracted shimmering rays of light. The shaft itself bore elaborate engravings, golden inlays running along its length, whispering forgotten prayers in a celestial tongue. Embedded in the handle sat a fist-sized amber gemstone, flecked with crimson, its own glow harmonizing with the relic's radiance. Beneath the floating mace lay an altar with a triangular indentation, as though designed to accept a key or a sacred offering. Alex pressed his hand over the socket, allowing his flesh to shift and mold itself to fill the gap, but nothing happened. He frowned. Whatever this mechanism required, it was beyond his current abilities. Shrugging off the mystery, he reached for the mace. The moment his fingers made contact, resistance pushed against him, an unseen force anchoring the weapon in place. He pulled harder, the force straining against him before finally relenting. As the mace left the altar, an audible click echoed through the cavern. The platform beneath him groaned as concentric rings of stone and gold began to rotate. One of the rings rose around him, forming a shimmering force field that enclosed him within. Pillars emerged from the abyss, their crystalline tips glowing with gathering energy. Above him, concentric golden rings materialized from the ceiling, aligning themselves above the newly risen pillars. As the pillars discharged beams of light into the floating rings, the structure spun faster and faster, becoming a luminous vortex or celestial power. Across the cavern, a stone archway began to glow. A portal flickered to life, revealing a view of the monastery's rooftop. Mounted atop the structure was a massive metallic turret, its design eerily similar to the glowing rings now trapping Alex. As the golden vortex reached its peak, a beam of raw, concentrated light surged forward, striking the turret. It hummed to life, rotating a full 180, its massive crystal focusing downward, preparing to fire. Not good. He immediately set to work, attempting to siphon energy from the force field. Yet no matter how much he drew in, the shimmering barrier remained intact. He shifted his arms into hammer-like appendages and struck at the force field with all his might, but the impact was absorbed without resistance. Each strike simply dissipated into the light, rendering his efforts futile. His gaze flickered toward the turret. It was nearly charged. "There's still a way out," he muttered. Without wasting another second, Alex gripped the mace tightly and did the unthinkably. He consumed it. The world around him warped, light and space folding in on themselves. He blinked and suddenly found himself in an entirely different place. He was seated in the middle of an endless meadow. The sky stretched above him, painted in hues of crimson, pink, and gold, like the horizon at the moment of sunrise or sunset. The air was warm, carrying the scent of blooming flowers and fresh earth. Looking down, Alex noticed his hands are his real hands. He wore the familiar, worn clothes from his old world. A shadow loomed over him, stretching across the grass. Alex turned and looked up. Before him stood a being of unparalleled majesty. A gigantic man, his visage shining like the morning sun itself. His hair, a cascading inferno of orange and red flames, flowed behind him like a celestial banner. His face was strikingly youthful, yet ancient, bearing an aura of wisdom that stretched beyond mortal comprehension. His body, though clad in flowing robes of radiant reds, yellows, and pinks, bore the unmistakable build of a warrior. Around his waist, a golden sash shimmered like woven sunlight. On his feet, golden sandals floated just above the ground, untouched by the earth beneath him. Alex didn't need an introduction. He knew who stood before him. "Hello there," the being said, his voice both gentle and commanding, carrying the weight of eternity. Lathander, the Morning Lord, had come to greet him. "So you must be Lathander," Alex said. After consuming the memories of the Inquisitors, he had learned that the astral prism wasn't the only relic they were searching for. "The one and only," the man said with a charming smile, his radiant presence casting a golden hue over the ethereal meadow. Alex stared at him for a long moment before speaking. "Do you intend to punish me for absorbing your blood?" Lathander's expression darkened, his celestial radiance dimming like an eclipse swallowing the sun. The warmth of his presence cooled, and for the first time, Alex felt something he hadn't in a long time: mere fear. "What you did is a great sin," Lathander said, his deep voice reverberating through Alex's very soul, pressing down on him like the weight of a collapsing building. "A desecration of something sacred." Alex clenched his fists, the tension coiling in his chest. "But it's not a big problem," Lathander continued, and just like that, The crushing force lifted. His face softened, his voice returning to its previous gentleness, like the morning sun breaking through a cold dawn. He smiled again, not with the patronizing grace of a god, but with the understanding of someone who saw through everything Alex was. "You don't need to be scared of me, Alex. If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't have wasted my time arranging this meeting." Lathander lowered himself to the ground, crossing his legs with a casual ease that was almost human. He gestured for Alex to sit. Alex hesitated, then lowered himself, mirroring the god's posture. "You know my name." "I know more than that. I know everything about you." Alex's jaw tightened. He turned his gaze away from the god, focusing instead on the vast, endless sky above them, streaked with reds and pinks like a burning horizon. He felt small under its vastness. They sat in silence, the weight of eternity pressing in. Finally, Alex spoke. "What do you think of me?" Lathander exhaled slowly, as if the answer carried the weight of the cosmos. "You are a poor child, carrying the sins of a man who is long dead." Alex's breath hitched. He forced himself to swallow, to keep his expression neutral. The words were like a scalpel, cutting clean through the carefully woven layers of self-loathing he had built around himself. "Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I never regained his memories," Alex murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Lathander nodded, his flaming hair flickering like a candle in the breeze. "From death, life," he whispered. "You died once and have been reborn. You are not him, and deep down you know that. But despite that, you keep tormenting yourself for the mistakes of someone else." Alex looked down at his hands, hands that had once torn through flesh and bone without hesitation, hands that had sculpted a nightmare from the remains of a broken world. How many had died because of him? How many lives had been erased by his reckless decisions? He had justified it at the time, convinced himself it was necessary. But was it? Was it ever? "I wanted to meet you because I saw the potential in you," Lathander continued, placing a hand on Alex's shoulder. His touch was warm, truly warm, the warmth of something real, something human. "There is always another dawn." Alex closed his eyes. Another dawn. He had long stopped believing in things like redemption. Monsters like him didn't get to wake up and decide to be better. But still, the world around him shifted again. The golden meadow faded, dissolving into streams of light and color. When Alex opened his eyes, he was back on the platform. The golden force fields were gone. The blood of Lathander was gone. The only light remaining was the eerie glow of the portal leading outside. He looked at his hand one last time, flexing his fingers. He felt lighter, somehow. Not absolved, not forgiven, but different. Taking a deep breath, Alex stepped through the portal. And of Act 1 intellect devourer abilities: split thinking, capable of multitasking effectively. Detect minds, sense the presence of sentient creatures within 91 meters. Contact mind link, establish telepathic communication. Fire immunity, completely immune to fire. Electrical resistance, highly resistant to electricity. Chemical simulation, produce acid. Body equilibrium, balance on any surface. Expansion and compression, ability to shrink and conceal. Mind flayer abilities: enhanced brain structure, more powerful and efficient brain functions. Bullet abilities: digging, ability to burrow through the ground. Armored hide, natural armor providing high defense. Earth sonar, sense vibrations through the earth. Ground softening slime, secrete slime that softens the ground. Spectator abilities: flight, capable of effortless flight. Magic generator, generates magic energy. Fear ray, emit a ray that induces fear. Stone ray, emit a petrifying ray. Wounding ray, emit a ray causing wounds. Charm ray, emit a ray that charms targets. Astral shift, shift to the astral plane once a day. Tadpole abilities: mind control, control the minds of others. Create mind flayers, potential to transform others into mind flayers. Ogre abilities: currently, no notable abilities. Harpy abilities: charming song, sing a song that charms listeners. Myconid abilities: animate to spores, animate dead organic matter. Hallucination spores, cause hallucinations. Pacification spores, daze threats. Venom spores, induce illness. Reproduction spores, create new myconids. Telepathic spores, telepathic communication. Distress spores, alert other myconids of danger. Durga abilities: Mage Armor, Magical Protective Armor, Raise Dead, Animate the Dead, Enlarge, Increase in Size, Blindness, Induce Blindness, Counterspell, Nullify other spells. Mind Spike, Inflict psychic damage. Mind Mastery, Enhanced mental control. Invisibility, Become invisible. Mind Flayer immunity, resistant to mind flayer control techniques. Drow abilities: Stealth, Move unseen. Darkness manipulation, Control darkness. Fairy fire, Reveal hidden targets. Detect magic, Sense magical presences. Shadow manipulation, Weave shadows. Weapon proficiency, Expert weapon skills. Enhanced intelligence, High intellect and tactical precision. Magma elemental abilities: Create lava, Generate and control lava. Magmatic disturbance, Cause eruptions. Magmatic regeneration, Heal using lava. Heat manipulation, Control heat, Vulnerable to cold. Megan abilities: Hive mind, Shared vitality and collective intelligence. Aboleth abilities: Amphibious adaptation, Breathe underwater indefinitely. Mucus cloud, Create a toxic mucus cloud. Slime healing, Regenerative slime for healing. Aquatic teleportation, Short distance water teleportation. True sight, See through illusions and invisibility. Genetic imprint, Transfer information genetically. Slunite crystal abilities: Enhanced night vision, See in the dark. Lunar empowerment, Strength from moonlight. Moonlight healing, Heal using moonlight. Selunite magic, Various moon-related magic abilities. Lunar shield, Protective barrier from moonlight. Silverlight, Divine awareness. Celestial transformation, Transform into a celestial being. Lathander's blood abilities: Radiant aura, Emit healing and protective light. Dawn strike, Radiant energy infused attacks. Sunfire, Control and conjure solar flames. Lathander's blessing, Bless allies with enhanced abilities. Rebirth, Revive a fallen ally or self once a day. Light of truth, Reveal hidden truths and dispel illusions. Solar wings, Fly with radiant wings. Morning star transformation, Temporary divine warrior form. Githyanki abilities: Mind steal link, Leech off a foe's psychic energy to make them more vulnerable and strengthen yourself. Mind steal tempest, Force a psychic connection on those around you. Misty step, Surrounded by silver mist, you teleport to an unoccupied space you can see. Mind claw of Tanarat, Summon a wicked Shinix blade. Detect teleportation, You can sense the presence of teleportation magic. You perceive it as a visible warp in space accompanied by a loud static in your mind. Bigger Bang abilities: Poison gas, Emit toxic gas. Explosive gas, Emit flammable gas. Torchstalk abilities: Explosive, Detonate on impact. Timask abilities: Befuddling spores, Cause confusion. Potion consumed: Great healing, Major health restoration. Speak with animals, Communicate with animals. Haste, Enhanced speed and reflexes. Arsonist soil, Increase flammability. Diluted oil of sharpness, Enhance weapon sharpness. Oil of accuracy, Improve aim. Oil of bane, Debilitate enemies. Oil of combustion, Increase fire damage. Oil of diminution, Shrink size. Wizard spin oil, Weaken spellcasters. Basic poison, Simple toxic substance. Crawler mucus, Slow down targets. Drow poison, Induce unconsciousness. Malice, Cause violent behavior. Purple worm toxin, Lethal poison. Serpent fang toxin, Venomous bite. Simple toxin, Basic poison. Wyvern toxin, Potent toxin. Classes: Fighter, Combat prowess and durability. Ranger, Gloomstalker, Stealth and dark vision. Ambush tactics. Fighter, Battle master, Tactical maneuvers. Barbarian, Berserk, Rage-fueled combat abilities. Cleric of Lathander,